Nick, what is the main problem that you solve for businesses?
I guess you can encapsulate it into one word, and it's sales. And when I say that, a sales function in a business has got many different facets. They've got different requirements. You've got different tasks, sometimes different job roles, depends on the size of the organization. And invariably, when I get involved in businesses, there's a disconnect between what the business ambition might be and the actual delivery of that kind of functionality to be successful. And I'll give you an example. Most businesses I work with have got a business plan. They've got financial forecasting. They've probably got KPIs and sales targets for the team. And that's standard. And every business I go and talk to can create those and pass them to me for analysis. But I always ask the question, so what's the sales plan to deliver those? And then I get a kind of a blank look sometimes. Well, what do you mean the sales plan? Well, what are you actually going to do to deliver your business plan, your financial forecast, and your KPIs and sales targets? And you've got a business sales plan, but then you've got the individual sales plan. What are your team doing on a day-to-day basis to move the sales dial for whether it's profit or revenue or increasing the number of customers? So effectively, it's kind of fixing holes in the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think, to be honest as well, like, I don't think many people consider a sales plan. It's like, okay, these are the targets. This is what we need to have at it. I've worked in sales environments before where it's just the target is there.
Yeah.
Get to it how you see fit. And that's usually kind of the ethos, and it's really not doable.
Well, the reality is, as you say, that's very common. And what they say is they'll say, right, crack on. We know what we expect you to do, or we know what we expect you to get. They know what the end game is. They know what they're trying to achieve, but very rarely do they know how to get there. So what you've got a mix. So let's say you take a typical sales team in an organization of a particular size. They may have, 2 or 3 business development people. You might have a key account or 2 key account managers looking after existing customers. You might have somebody at sales support level doing research and data mining and all the things that go with that. And they bring their own experiences or skills or likes and dislikes to the job. So if you're not naturally a new business hunter and you have to prospect as part of your job, but you also have to look after existing customers, because quite often in a business that's not yet mature with its sales function, people are doing both, then you're going to do the bit that you enjoy most or that you are better at. And so one of those will suffer. It's either you're not looking after your customers well enough, or you're not winning new or prospecting for new business enough. So in that respect, your businesses are letting the staff down by not giving them direction. They're just saying to them, go and do it, and then we'll talk to you at the end of the month and see how you've got on, it's bonkers really to me. It's bizarre.
And what industries do you primarily see this disconnect? Is it across all, or do you work within a few different industries that you like to work in, or that you see that the problem's more prevalent, or how do you approach it?
I like to work with businesses that make things. Right. So manufacturing, engineering, anyone with production, but making things can also be content makers, for example. One of my biggest and longest established clients, they do digital and e-learning solutions, where they are producing fantastic products. So the product is the e-learning. It doesn't have to be a physical product, as in digital products, a widget or a whatever it might be. But I like the service industry is a sector I've done quite a bit of work in over the years, but I kind of don't actively seek service industry clients, because you're selling 2 things there, aren't you, in the service industry? You're selling time and expertise. Sometimes the expertise is questionable. And once you've sold the time once, you can't sell it again. And it's just, it's less interesting for me than it is to say, how do we move these more widgets, or how do we find more customers for this particular new development of a new product range, or whatever it might be. It's just more interesting, really, in that manufacturing, engineering, or product design environment.
Just coming back to the service side of things, though, because that's the majority of new businesses that are setting up every day. People go from being an expert in something to then, and it's the whole, Michael Gerber E-myth type thing. Whereas just because you're good at the thing doesn't mean you can become a business owner in that thing, because you've actually got to sell the thing. And that's where I think a lot of people are going wrong, is like they're not focusing on sales. They're focusing on doing the thing and then hoping people come to them. So with the service business side of things, what can someone do if they're just like newly formed as a business, other than having a sales plan? What can they be doing like immediately to get them better at sales, or get them doing the thing more?
You're probably right with regard to where a business starts from. Often businesses start because someone's got an idea, or they've got an ambition to be their own boss, and they're good at something. And I'll give you an example. It may be that you are a good product designer, for example, and you're working for a company, you're doing product design work, and you're really good at that, and your clients love the work that you do, and it's really impressive, and you're getting great feedback and great results. And you might then decide to say, well, you know what, I'll do this for myself. I'll become a product design agency, and I call it an agency, but there might just be you at that point. And the first critical problem is, because you're a good designer doesn't make you a good business owner, and it certainly doesn't make you a good sales professional. So what I'd say to you is, first of all, is if you have the ambition to do that, forget the fact that you're already good at what you're good at. Put that in the bank. We know you're a good designer. We know you can design products. We know you are exceptional in terms of what the client gets from you. But you have to understand, how do you take that offering out to a marketplace? And I'd like to give the audience a bit of a really quick tip, okay, on how to do it. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're selling, whatever your business is, can you articulate your business in 3 words, in 3 simple words, okay? So, for example, I'm working with a company over in Skipton in North Yorkshire, or near Skipton in North Yorkshire. They're a very well established second-generation family business. They make products for the orthodontic and dental industry, and they're exceptionally good at what they do. But when I first started working with them, trying to get a consistency of tell me about the business from their sales team, their account managers, their internal people, was very difficult. So we sat down and we distilled. We had like a brainstorm session with 10 of their senior people from all sorts of areas of the business. And I said, just describe your business to me. I was putting keywords down, that kind of thing. We distilled it down into 6 words at that point. And I said, I'm going to leave you for a week to come up with your final 3. And the order is really important, because it has to roll off the tongue. And what they came up with was collaboration, precision, and innovation. Now, those 3 words then became the ambition for that business to describe themselves internally, externally, stakeholders, exhibitions, customers, etc. It takes time to get that right, but whenever you talk to this company now and say, tell me about the business, they'll say, we stand for 3 things: collaboration, and there's a backstory; precision, there's a backstory; innovation, there's a backstory.
I was going to say, because those 3 words, they're just words. It's how do you then use those words when you're talking or pitching or, selling, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Those 3 words, they're meaningless unless you put them into context, right?
Well, they are, and that's the purpose. Is we need to have 3 words that describe us in headline form, but we need to know what the backstory is. So what's the backstory to those 3 words? And it's the backstory that's where you put your passion, your energy, your DNA, your case studies, your referenceability, your evidence. So, for example, taking those 3 words. I've done it with quite a few. Well, I've done it with dozens of companies over the last 18 months. It becomes something of a mantra of mine, is the ability to describe your business in these kind of 3 words. And they're always different. Sometimes they roll in terms of alliteration. So, innovation, insight, and whatever. I'm trying to think of the third one in that particular instance.
Ingenious.
Yeah, but, effectively, sometimes, how they feel about that. But the collaboration, precision, innovation, the storyline behind that is, collaboration describes how they work in partnership with their distributors, with their agents, and with their customers. A lot more to that behind the scenes. Precision isn't just about the instruments that they make, and they are, market leading in terms of precision for use in orthodontics and dentists, which you'd like them to be, wouldn't you? If someone's shoving something in your mouth.
I mean, it's very, very poignant for me right now, but yeah.
So
I went through
precision's about that, but it's also about the ambition to do things right first time and get things right, and invest in systems and processes to be better at how they interact. So there's a story behind that. And innovation is about not standing still. And then the evidence of, well, okay, you say you're innovative, where's the proof? And then they talk about product design, product development, what's next. So, and why I like the 3-word approach is because everybody in the business then understands how to describe the business consistently, but people inside the business might have a slightly different story to tell under those 3 words, but it doesn't alter the DNA, and it's really important. But my favourite word in the sales pitch, and I'm not really here to talk about pitching particularly, but is the 4th word into the equation. And the best word that I encourage people to have and use on a regular basis is the word imagine. Mm-hmm. So I say to people, let's go back to the product design person who is a product designer, fantastic at what they do, sets up a business, hasn't sold anything in their life, not been involved in that. They need to find some imagine moments. So imagine you've got a problem that looks like this. This is how we would look at it. And the 3 words they would find would describe the process of working with them and the impact that they make. And that makes it easier to consistently get a message across, which is the starting point of your sales funnel, isn't it, really? Yeah. Do people even understand what I'm about, really? So that would be my initial headline approach to somebody in that particular situation.
So we're starting with articulation. Like, it's just being able to literally create your corner of the market, and this is where I'm standing. With the businesses, obviously, that you currently work with, more established, they make things. Where is the disconnect with them? Because I understand, that they don't quite have the sales plan. They have sales targets, but how is that disconnect manifesting itself within the business? Like, what does that look like from an actual sort of like real world case? Like, in terms of how do people behave every day, or where's the business at? Is it, is it stagnation? Is it, what does that look like in real world terms for those kinds of businesses?
Well, a lot of the businesses that I get involved with have got growth ambition, and they're often frustrated at senior level. So I'm usually engaged by managing directors, sales directors, etc. And they're often frustrated by a bit of a plateau or stagnation, or in some cases, dropping backwards. And they've got an ambition to be better and bigger and more competitive and more successful. And the first thing I see when I go into an organisation that is stagnating or plateauing, or call it what you will, is we do the same thing all the time. We do the same thing we've always done. And unfortunately, the world around us has changed, but we haven't really changed with it. So what we find is that I'll go and just observe really how the sales function works. I'm looking at the sales funnel. How do you prospect? What happens in terms of, when you get somebody that you want to do business with? What's the engagement piece? Is that engagement piece working? Is it enough? Is it different? Is it strong enough? Is it just, me too, same as everybody else? If the engagement piece is good, what's happening in terms of the when you reach out and then they respond to you? Are your systems and processes quick, hot, effective, efficient? Or is it just, a bit kind of dull, same? And usually we find that we need to shake it up a bit, really, and shake it up in a good way. I'm not there to frighten people, worry people. I get two reactions from sales teams who I work with. One is, oh, thank goodness someone's coming in to help us because we're desperately keen to do it better. That's great. And I do get occasionally, probably more than occasionally, historically, people who go, what are you doing here? You don't know anything about our business. And those are the people invariably who know that I'm going to find out that they've been, what's the phrase, tossing it off for a number of years in terms of, doing just enough to get by. And I'm going to turn the rock over and find out that they're just not been up to the job. And it might be that they are up to the job. They've turned into a little bit kind of lazy or a little bit stagnated in themselves, really.
Yeah. I think that can be the thing in sales as well, because it's performative, isn't it? Like, it's a performance function of the business. If you stop performing, the whole business kind of slows down, and you're literally at the front end of the business. I saw a really interesting thing from Alan Sugar, of all people, and it's an old video, and he's basically talking about, because you said something earlier about the world passing you by, that the world's changed, and it's actually for the business owner to release themselves out of the business for 1-2 days a week, just to actually go out into the marketplace to understand what's going on. Do your current clients do that? Do you see them doing that enough, or are they quite inside the business, not working on the business? Like how do you see that at the moment?
Well, historically, I did a lot of work on a program called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program around 2010 to about 2016. So over those 6 years, there were 12 cohort groups that were run by Leeds University Business School. They were all ambitious, growth-hungry businesses who were looking to achieve significant growth, employment, all these opportunities. They went through quite a serious vetting process to get onto the program, and it was a program designed to help business owners who were accidental business owners in some cases. How do you understand how to run a business? There's modules on finance and leadership and whatever. And I used to run the sales module at that particular program. And invariably what happened was, this was quite a commitment over 6 months for these business owners to come to Leeds University Business School, to do homework, business planning and all that kind of thing. And every single person on graduation nearly always said, I didn't think I had time to come and do this. And now I've done it. I don't believe that I've found the time, and B, what a difference it's made. And most of those businesses left there with the ambition to say, well, the amount of time I've invested in this program, I'm now going to invest in not being in the business going forward, so that I can continue to use that thinking time and planning time and ambition time. I would say that quite a few of them succeeded in maintaining that, quite a few didn't. And the ones who didn't go back into the business doing the delivery on a day-to-day basis. And I totally agree with you. The successful businesses who've got a growth ambition and growth plan are the ones who, the businesses will function when they're not there in that short term, if they're aware, looking at strategy, market analysis, competitor information. But it takes a hell of a lot of discipline when you're spinning plates, and if you're making stuff and your main machine's gone down and whatever. But good leaders and good sales leaders and good MDs know that the business will operate in their absence, certainly temporarily, and they're the ones that, funnily enough, seem to be more successful.
Yeah, it's part of the growth paradox, isn't it? Like, you actually get to a point where, and I can't remember who said this, I've heard it a few times before, but your best performers, they don't perform at their best when you're hanging around them. Like, you kind of need to be away from them, let them get on with it.
Yeah.
But where I was kind of going to go with that is, to what extent do you think salespeople or people within a sales function should be entrepreneurial? Because we talk about not having the sales plan and people going, okay, well, here are our targets, go and figure it out. So in that case, should they be, well, I mean, obviously without the expertise of yourself going in and giving them a sales plan, if they can't obviously bring someone like yourself in, should those salespeople be entrepreneurial and just figure it out?
Two words that I use a lot when you're looking for an ideal sales professional. And when I say sales professional, anything that influences sales, so internal, external, account management, new business, prospecting, anything to do with sales, you need two things in your locker, okay? Ideally. You need to be inquisitive and you need to be creative. So I'll give you an example. Lots of businesses process orders. I work with lots of businesses who make stuff, and I've worked with lots of businesses who distribute stuff. And they've got busy sales desks, but they are busy inbound sales desks. So the phone will ring, customer will say, have you got 20 of these? Can I have them tomorrow? Here's the shipping details, etc. And they process the orders. And my argument there is that's not sales, that's order processing. There's nothing to do with sales. It's literally order management. And the argument that the people who do those jobs would say is, but I'm providing a great customer service. And indeed they are. They are handling the inquiry, they are processing the order, they're shipping the goods, and the customer ticks a box and says, I'm really happy with that company. Where's the inquisitiveness in that? There's no inquisitiveness in that whatsoever. So, for example, I always say, if you get an order from somebody that is slightly unusual, that they've not ordered that before, or they've ordered a lot more this time than they've usually done, or actually, we haven't heard from this company for 6 months and suddenly an order's come out of the blue, ask the question. Don't just process the order. Process the order by all means. And the first thing you do is you ring the customer and say, thanks for your order. Just to let you know we're processing that. You'll get the goods tomorrow. But I'm a bit intrigued, actually. You know, what's made you order 10 times your previous volume and whatever? Because being inquisitive, you're finding out a lot more about your customer environment. Oh, we've just won a massive order for, a particular project ourselves. Okay. So how can we help you with that? What can we do to support you in that new growth for you? But if you just order process or just do the same, if you just accept an order from a customer and celebrate the fact I've got an order, that's not the same as being inquisitive. What created the order? Where did it come from? What made them choose you? Why that particular product? Because that's unusual for them. Actually, there's an order. I'll give you a really simple example. One of my clients is a wholesale electrical distributor. They sell to the likes of Edmondson's and City Electrical Factors. They're the next level up in terms of storing massive amounts of white goods and that kind of thing.
Right.
At any one time, they sell to companies also directly who are university halls of residence in the summer, who are, when the students have been in for a year, they'd literally go in and bomb the place and start again. New fridge, new washer, new cooker, all that kind of thing. But let's imagine they're selling TVs. All TVs these days are wall mounted. So they've got 50-inch wall mounted TVs and they've got hundreds of them. If somebody sends an order in for 50, I want to order 20 wall mounted TVs, they process the order for 20 wall mounted TVs. Have they done a good job? Well, yeah, from a customer service point of view, they processed the order for 20 wall mounted TVs. How are those TVs going to be bracketed to the wall? Because they sell the brackets as well. But if you're not inquisitive to say, oh, by the way, what are you doing about your brackets? Funny enough, actually, I didn't know you sold brackets. I'll order them from you. And here's the reality. People negotiate on things that they're buying from you, but they rarely negotiate on their impulse purchase. So if you've had a negotiated price on your TVs, you might then get full margin on your brackets because it feels like an afterthought.
Yeah.
And it's the inquisitiveness to be able to do that. And the creativity comes in terms of joining the dots for your customers.
Yeah.
Did you know this goes with that? And have you thought about that working around there? Or actually, we've got a different solution to this particular problem that you might not be aware of. But too many people in sales are too happy to just process the order. And that is just not the same as sales.
There's a really nice saying that I heard from he's a marketer actually. He's not necessarily a salesperson, but he has to do sales for himself, so it clearly is. But he says people who work in sales and marketing should be proposal makers, not note takers. And it's like something that I've absorbed from that, and I think it's one of the best sayings I've heard in a long time. And I even tell my team about this now, even with digital marketing, even that.
Yeah.
When we're getting on weekly calls or whatever, it's like, well, what's next? What do you need next? What's the next problem? What can we do for you next?
The starting game, apart from the prospecting about who you want to talk to, is you've got to earn the right to have a quote. earn the right to put a price point together, earn the right to put a proposal together. And if salespeople lose sight of that, it then just becomes about relationships. I'm phoning an existing customer to see how they are. Really? You're not a doctor. What are you doing now? How are you? I'm fine. Okay. What happens next in the conversation? I'm phoning you because we've got something interesting that might be worthwhile. We're doing some great stuff that you haven't maybe seen before. Or actually, we've got a new product in. I thought of you. I'd like to discuss it with you. That's about being creative in terms of putting things out there. But it's about earning the right to quote, isn't it, really?
Do you charge for quotes or not?
Do what, sorry?
Charge for quotes.
Charge for creating quotes.
Yeah, I've seen a guy talk about this quite heavily, and I won't name him, but he's quite a prolific sales trainer, and he says, people should be charging for, and there's probably nuance to this, and I'm probably misquoting him massively, but the idea of charging for quotes or charging for proposals apparently makes the prospect more engaged in the process.
I totally agree in principle. I don't think that if you're doing a proposal for something that isn't necessarily tangible, that it would work necessarily. But I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, probably a bit longer, one of my clients were designing airflow systems for factories where there was dust and fume. So it's an extraction system. So it's all the kind of ventilation, it's the fans, it's the throughput of air, it's all that kind of thing. And the guy who was the sales director was also the chief engineer, and unfortunately had a multiple sort of level of jobs, but he was seen as in the industry the guy to go to for the technical knowledge. So he was called Steve, and Steve would spend half a day, 3/4 of a day, sometimes a day, designing a solution for a client or prospective client. And that solution could be worth 80 grand, 100 grand, 40 grand, 150 grand, somewhere in that kind of, decent size kind of ballpark. And it was all about the technicalities of where to place the fans, what size of fan and throughput of air, how the ducting needs to be put together. It was technically, he was the guy who said that's the solution that you need. And they were converting 1 in 7 of those, 1 in 7. And the other 6 out of 7 were taking his designs and going to somebody else and saying, actually, could you do, this is what we want, can you do it? Because Steve would design stuff that had high quality fans. So I think they used a company called Moldo, rings a bell, sort of Swedish, like a Volvo kind of equivalent. People just go and say, can you design me a Dacia version of that for cheaper? I now know what the design is. And I said to Steve, you're giving away your intellectual property, you're giving away your knowledge, etc. I said, you need to start charging for your proposals. His first response was, nobody does that. And I said, I don't care. I said, because if you start charging £500, just £500 for the design of a solution, I guarantee that once somebody's paid the £500, they feel kind of obliged and in a relationship with you. They converted 3 out of 5 going forward from 1 in 7.
Wow.
Just by charging £500 for his knowledge and his intellectual property. That works on a multi-level 40, 50, 80, 70,000 pound kind of technical proposal. But I'm not necessarily work so much on a digital design solution or a training proposal or whatever. I don't disagree with the principle of it. I just think it depends on the end value. If the end value is not thousands and thousands, then what you're going to charge for the proposal? Yeah,
I mean that's the argument, isn't it? I mean that's a really good example though of your systems design guy. That is, because that's a fair exchange. Actually, that's a fair value exchange, isn't it? You get in this intricately designed system where he's had a look at the exact places where the fans need to go, and you're paying for that.
Yeah,
and you could take that design off to someone cheaper if you wanted to.
But we've been paid for our time in that. So at least we've been paid for our time for designing it, and actually now you paid £500 for it. You're sort of in a relationship with it, aren't you? It makes it much less likely. I'm not saying it doesn't. People still go for the cheapest sometimes, and those are the people you don't want as customers who don't value the value, do they really?
Buy on price, yeah. Is sales a lost art?
Great question. Potentially it's losing its art because there's too many people.
And it is an art.
It's an art, it's a skill, and it's Yeah, it is. It is both of those things. But I think the problem that you've got is that a generation of people coming through into business now think that sending an email and posting on social media is representing the sales function. And to be fair, sales has changed dramatically. I know you're a big fan of Daniel Priestley and the oversubscribed book and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And I'd agree with the principle of the fact that you push content and expertise out, you push consistent messages out there, people understand what you're about, and that draws people towards you. But you've still got to convert them.
Absolutely. And, just to add to that point, that just what he's making the argument he's making is that you're marketing for signals and you still need somebody or a team of people to pick up on those signals and have that conversation, pick up the phone. But yeah, carry on. Sorry. But yeah, marketing for signals. Yeah.
But that's where the inquisitiveness comes in. The marketing for signals is a great phrase. It has changed, historically, and I'm going back, 1,000 years really. When you worked in sales on day one, they give you a yellow pages and then say start at A, finish at Z, and ring everybody who is in whatever, this particular sector. And everybody used to start at, Aardvark Services and end up at, Mr. Zakynthos, who never got a call because you ran out of steam by the time you got to G. And I used to say to people in that situation, as I say, literally hundreds of years ago, start at M because no one's ringing anyone from M to Z and you might have a fighting chance. That was old style sales. That's garbage. That was always terrible. It was just, that was a numbers game. It was really, really random. It's like buying a lottery ticket, that really, and expecting to be successful. And I worked with a guy, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, a managing director brought me and he said, I've got a young, raw sales guy. Said he's not frightened of the phone, but he's not getting any results. He said, could you just work with him and just see what, what's he not doing? What should he be doing? And, could you do a couple of days work with him? So I said, yeah, no problem. And this was less than maybe 10 years ago. First thing I said to him, young lad, I said, so how many calls do you make a day? Outbound calls. Proudly, he said to me, 130. I was like, what? He said, well, my target's to make 120 calls a day. I said, so you targeted for the output, not the input. He said, well, yeah. He said, I make 120 calls a day. He said, and I said, how's that going? He said, well, I'm not converting many. So I asked him to run some calls. And the calls were like this. Hi, my name's John. Do you want some telephone systems? No. Okay. Hi, my name's John. Do you want some telephone systems? No. He was brilliant at asking the question, do you want any telephone systems? And everybody said no, but he made 120 calls. And I said to the MD, why is he making 120 calls? He said, because that's his target. I said, but I'd rather he made 20 calls that were researched, valid, conversational to people who might be in the market for his product, and I'll teach him the skills to have the conversations. I said, you just got a phone, literally a dot, press the buttons and ring the phone. And the MD was like, yeah, but if he doesn't make enough calls, he won't make enough sales. I said, he's making no sales from 120 calls. I said, I guarantee he'll create some opportunity. I'm not saying he'll make the sales, but he'll create the opportunities we talked about from 20 or 25 research calls to the right sector. If you need a phone system, it's because you've just moved office or because you've expanded or whatever it might be, find those people and talk to them. All right. Like a big light bulb came on. I'm thinking, that's how people perceive sales to be. And it has changed. Create content, put your expertise out there, but you still need that ability to, once they've been drawn in with a comment or a like or a share or whatever, you still going to be able to pick up the phone and say, I really appreciate your comment on my LinkedIn post about whatever it might be. I'm interested in, what made you do that and what do you think about this and whatever. And that's where the art's gone. That's where the skill's gone. And the art and the skill come from the ability to use the phone. I did a sarcastic piece of training a little while ago. I had a room full of quite young people, and I'm okay. I know all the political sensitivities and all that. I'm okay with all that. But I picked up my iPhone and I just put it to my ear and I said, just to let you know, this is a phone. And I said, you put it to your ear and you can talk into it. I said, because everybody in this room sees this technology as a piece of thing that you you tap your screen and you send a WhatsApp or you send an email or whatever. I said, that's its functionality. I said, but its primary functionality, when it was it's called an iPhone. You can ring people on it. And I think there's a reticence. It's a generalisation, but there's a reticence for people who are less confident because they've never had to do that.
But confidence comes from, I mean, this is something that's coming up quite a lot, certainly in my world, like the idea of confidence, and there's two different types. There's the confidence from doing the thing 30 times, but there's the confidence at the beginning. It's the situational confidence. I would probably rename that to bravery. The actual bravery to pick up the phone and know that you're probably going to get rejected. The ability, and I think that's kind of what's missing, is the not caring to getting rejected, because I think everyone's quite, they hold on to that, and I can understand it because it's not a nice feeling. But once you experience a bit of rejection, maybe 4 or 5 times within an hour, you suddenly become quite hard to it, I would say.
You become resilient, but let's take that back. I'll give you 2 examples. One, as an example of growing up, anyone of a certain age will recognise this. When you had a landline in your house...
Oh, I remember those.
You had one landline and it was usually in the hall. So if growing up you wanted to have a conversation with your friends, or God forbid you had a girlfriend that was ringing the house, absolutely no privacy. You'd be in the hall, and your mum and dad and your brother or sister would be listening in and all that kind of thing. So I think we had inbuilt resilience from the fact that the telephone was seen as something that we...
Just on that, we had 2 phones in our house, one upstairs, one downstairs. And if you had a conversation on the downstairs one, someone could pick up the one upstairs and listen into your conversation. It was wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
So therefore, you brought up with the fact that the phone is an instrument of potential torture.
Or voyeurism, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. So you were posh with 2 phones though, weren't you?
I think one was crappier than the other. I think it was like, that was our main phone, and we moved it upstairs when we got a new one.
Okay.
So it was just old.
So that was the thing, why the phone for people of a certain age is nothing to be feared, because we've had to live with that kind of scenario. But the other one is in terms of the sort of fear of rejection, is that unfortunately, from a generational point of view, a lot of younger people have been brought up knowing nothing but social media, and social media is all about validation and the likes and the love that they shared for their perfect lives, etc. And people who disagree with them are seen as trolls, for example, and they don't like being disagreed with because it's not right, it's not how social media should be used. So if you're brought up in a situation where everything that you see is validated and liked and whatever, quite naturally, when you pick up the phone to ring prospects or whatever and you don't get what you want, it feels absolutely alien.
Yeah.
So we've got to break that down and say, what's the worst that can happen? My worst scenario when I'm training someone is when they want to consider every possible angle that might occur if they pick up that phone. What if they say this? What if they say that? What if they go there? What if they do that? And my argument against that is you cannot control. What you can control is that first 15 seconds on a call where you sound confident, you sound worth listening to, and you've got a hook that says to a customer, potential customer, listen to me going forward. There's a reason I've rung, and listen to me going forward. I think I've got something you might be interested in. And it's getting that bit right. But you don't learn to drive in the passenger seat, do you? You learn to drive by sitting in the driving seat. And we all remember those first 6 or 7 lessons, kangaroo hops and stalling at the junction and waiting for a car to leave Leeds and one to leave Hull so you can pull out in York because it's like, well, I did. So we all remember that. It's the same with the telephone. You've just got to do it. But if you've got someone like me or somebody in your business who's a experienced coach, get them to do it with you, get them to give you good feedback and get them to help you to build resilience, because you can't just fail at the first hurdle and then say, well, I'll just send an email, because that's not selling. Email has no place in sales. It has a place in communicating what you might have discussed or agreed, or it might be part of the email marketing that generates potential leads back, but it's not a sales tool in its own right.
And I presume would you put Zoom and Google Meet in the same bracket as the phone?
I think that's the next stage for me. I think what you got to look at is a natural phrase of we've prospected, we've looked for our opportunities. That could that could come from anywhere. It could be an inbound inquiry that you're going to follow up. It could be something that you've done directly and influenced. That's usually, there might be a preemptive email. There might be then there's a follow-up on the phone. Your next stage is then, let's get eye contact. Let's do the Zoom or the Teams, which then might lead to a face-to-face or not. Depends on geography and all sorts of factors. Yeah. But I think the Zoom and the Teams is the next level down from the first phone call.
Yeah. It's a strange one with Zoom and Google Meets as well, though, because it's a pre-agreed, we both agree to show up at this time.
Yep.
So it's as good as, because as well, just a slight tangent on this. A couple of years ago, was talking to a prospect via email. The conversation had started on LinkedIn after a post, exactly how you sort of described it. Put a bit of content out there. They replied. We started a conversation. We took it over to email, and then they had their phone number at the bottom of the email signature, and I called it, and they were shocked. Like, what are you calling me for? I was like, I thought I'd just give you a call, just so we could have a chat. I thought we were having a Zoom call. Yeah, we will do. But I thought I'd just give you a call. We'll have a chat. And they were so shocked. But I think that's something that people will put people into a bit of a tiz, really, in terms of like.
But they took the call.
They took the call.
And
because I don't withhold my number, though.
Yeah, but also you're in conversation at that point. I think the phrase I hate in any office is, shall we jump on a Teams? And it's like, shall we not? Really? First of all, jumping on a Teams suggests some significance, and actually on a Teams that's randomly booked, people who just sat there doing emails and something else, you're not even engaged, whatever it might be. But I totally agree with you from a sales point of view, is so for example, I am working with a client at the moment, and they are really good at generating conversation opportunities and that kind of stuff. So the MD speaks at conferences, they go to exhibitions, they put themselves out there, they're very clear in what they do, and they're very good at what they do. But the MD and I go back a long way, and he rang me a little while ago, and he said, Nick, I've got about 20 people, he said, that are just, I'm not on top of following them up. He said, I met them, we had a great conversation after my presentation at the Edinburgh Institute or wherever it might be. And they're keen on working with us. He said, I rang them once and they weren't available. He said, and I've not done anything with them. He said, because I'm busy running the business.
It's a cardinal sin, that.
Yeah, and it's like, okay. And so he passed me a spreadsheet with I think it was 18 leads on the first spreadsheet he sent through, with a little bit of background and history. This is where I met them. This is what we talked about. And the end game of that objective of those phone calls that I did for him was to get Teams calls. After that, it's up to him, because he's good at that. But the Teams call was the objective.
So you were the setter.
I set the Teams calls up. And over a period of a couple of weeks of an hour here, 2 hours there, chasing follow-ups or whatever it might be, we've got something like 9 out of 18 converted to Teams calls.
Wow.
That he wouldn't have got because he hadn't got the discipline or the time or the inquisitiveness. I was like, oh, tell me a bit more about that story. And I was on the phone to people, and not one person, because of how I do it, not one person was put out of shape or upset that I'd made the phone call. And most of them go, oh yeah, good to hear. I said, I work with Rich's, oh yeah, great. You spoke at the Edinburgh Institute. Oh yeah. I said, you implied at the time that you were interested in doing X, Y, Z. And I'm just looking to move that forward, really. I'm seeing what your diary looks like. Got a few dates that Richard's given me to see if you're available. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. But you've got to pick up the phone to do that. Richard was very good at identifying opportunities and drawing people to him. But the day-to-day operations of his business, meant that he only had the capacity to ring them once, maybe twice if he was lucky, and then move on to something else. And these were sort of withering on the vine. So you have to do that.
I think you've just inadvertently stumbled across something that's quite interesting, in the sort of like the networking and speaking and public engagements where you're out and about with people. The art of the follow-up is something that I think, again, I call it an art because it's something that requires discipline, bit of creativity.
Yeah.
again, is that something that's getting lost as well? Like, well, clearly it is with that client, but that was because of lack of time or lack of process, or
a combination.
Someone not actually in that role to do it.
What I would say, and I've used the phrase before, networking is like buying a lottery ticket, isn't it, really? You go to a network in the hope that you find someone or some people of potential interest. And, I'm not going to get into the whole evangelical networking and regularity of, meet the same people and
BNI.
Give us gains and all that kind of stuff. Some of it is potentially just bollocks, really. But what I would say to you is the art of the follow-up is being lost, because I selectively go to networking events. Sometimes I go with a view saying, I'll have a couple of beers, I'll meet some people I already know. I'm not even there for business. I'm not even looking actively,
it's
whatever.
10 o'clock in the morning.
But, sorry?
And it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock in the morning, yes. A couple of beers and a vodka, whatever. But the people just don't follow you up. And I represented one of my clients at a networking event in Manchester recently. And I met somebody who was quite reticent about giving me their details, but said I gave them an old-fashioned card. That's like handing somebody a COVID-infested piece of cardboard. That people look at you and go, a card? What the hell's that?
It's all QR codes on LinkedIn now.
Oh, I know all that. Yeah. But so I gave this card to this young person who was, quite reticent about giving their details over. Didn't have the badge on or anything. Never heard from them. And actually, I'm sat there saying, we could do business with you because you are exactly the kind of client that we're looking to collaborate and partner with. And this person's never followed up. And I went to the event organisers and they've struggled to find out who this actual person was. Maybe it's just somebody who walked in the room randomly and just made up some bullshit to get a free canapé or whatever. I don't know. But the follow-up's not being done. Just isn't.
When it comes to sales within businesses, what are we not talking about? What are people skirting around? Because, we understand how important sales is. Sales is ultimately the function that will drive your business forward and grow it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to say anything more on that, really. But in terms of sales, what are we not talking about that needs to be said?
We're not talking about the ask. There's not enough people are prepared to ask for the business. Okay. There's a way, I'll explain a couple of things around how I sort of suggest it to people, but I used to have a client and he used to have on the wall of his sales office, he used to have these big posters saying, ask for the order, which I thought was quite patronising to his team, to be fair. It used to say ask for the order, and he would not buy from anyone as a business owner unless they'd ask for the order. And I was at his office one day and there was a telecoms guy measuring up to put some new Cat6 cabling in the office for doing a new internet provision. Now, what he was doing, he was measuring up, and I said to the guy, I was upstairs away from the MD and he was in the training room. I said, what are you up to? He said, I'm measuring up for some Cat6 cabling and a new phone system. I said, brilliant. I said, have you got the order? He said, no. He said, but, I will. I said, have you asked for the order? He went, well, yeah, I think so. I said, think so is not the same. Have you asked for the order? I said, because the guy downstairs will not place the order with you unless you've asked for it. I said, specifically, go and look at the signs in the sales office. He asks his sales team to ask for the order every time. If you don't ask for the order, you're not getting the order. He went, I think we will. I went, it's up to you then. Anyway, he went downstairs and I sort of nodded and winked to the guys, if to say, encouraging him to go to the desk of the MD, going, go on. So he went in, he said, can we have the order? And the MD said, yes, you can now. But he wouldn't have given him the order, so the ask is there, right? People just don't do it.
Angel on his shoulder. Right?
Sorry?
You were the angel on his shoulder.
Well, he got an order for an installation that he wouldn't have got because he'd have gone away as a salesperson thinking, that's gone well. The guy was nice. I got a coffee, got asked to measure up. Yeah, we're definitely going to get that. And people don't measure their level of conversion success. They just assume it's going to be, oh, that went well.
Yeah.
I've never met a salesperson yet who comes out of a meeting and how'd your meeting go? Who's been honest enough to say, actually, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I don't think I performed that well. Not sure I got my message across. Maybe it's not for us. How'd your meeting go? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That went well. Salespeople always do
that's
that.
in the bag, that one.
That's in the bag. I call them Arsenal fans because it's gonna happen. It's the gunners, you know. It's gonna come off. It's gonna hit my pipeline. It's gonna hit my forecast. So
I know a couple of Arsenal fans who watch this as well.
Well, they'll enjoy that. Arsenal fans who are gonna do this and gonna do that. So the one thing I'd say to people is, and it's about confidence. Sometimes you're not sure you've read the room or read the other person, and it's a bit. I liken it a bit like dating, really. You're on a date, and if you ask for, if you say, "Can I see you again?" it's quite risky if you've misread it, and they go, "Whoa, you've not really. It's been the worst night out ever," you know, kind of thing. If you're not sure, and it's a risk, that's where the rejection comes in. What if I step over the mark? What if I say, "Can we have the order?" And I say, if you've controlled the environment and controlled the narrative and the conversation, you've handled objections, all that. Before you ask for the orders, just summarise the high points of working together. So you and I might be talking about doing some work together with my business and the growth guys, for example. And I might say to you, so here's what your challenge is. Here's what we've discussed and the options are. Here's what it would look like in reality and in practice. So I'm reminding you before I say to you about asking for the order. And I'm not surprisingly direct enough to say, so are we going ahead? It's a closed question to yes or no question, because I think I'm good enough to have read the room. A lot of people go, "Oh, I'm not sure." So I just say to them, use a soft approach. Summarise by all. You have to summarise because otherwise you won't get to where you want to get to. And at the end of that summary, just say to the other person, "And what happens next? What do you want to do?" Because that potential customer will say, they'll tell you where they are. Actually, yeah, okay, let's go ahead with that. 60% will probably say, yeah, we'll go ahead. The others will say to you, "I'm not sure, need to think about it." That's great. What do you need to think about? How can I help you with that? What information do you need from me? It's your second bite of the closing cherry. Yeah. So if you're not sure or not confident or not skilled or experienced enough, as long as you've summarised what the problem was, what your solution looks like and what working together looks like going forward, you've earned the right to say, "And what do you want to do now?" You have owned that opportunity because the customer will tell you exactly what they're thinking. And that's a really good closing opportunity for people who haven't got either the skill, the experience or the confidence. It's like asking for a second date. At the end of an evening, you summarise the high points of going for a pizza, a little walk down by the river or whatever. You say, "What do you want to do now?" And they say, "I'd like to see you again." They've made the choice, haven't they?
And what about objection handling and using the dating analogy? You know, say if there have been some like troubling times over the date, you know, maybe you misspoke or I don't know, you burped or something after taking a gulp of lemonade or beer.
Have you been out with me on a date, Paul?
I think I might have been on the next table, but yeah. Sorry, I'm just like kind of referring back to that particular experience. But yeah, the objection handling ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, so like almost being vulnerable and go, "Look, I know I burped. I know I misspoke. But can I see you again?"
Own it.
Own it.
One final example. I tend to use like stories, case studies, analogies, whatever it might be. 2018, 17, 18, I got a call from a guy, CEO of a business down in South Wales, down in Cardiff. They manufacture all of the rope-handled posh paper bags that you get from buying in Gap, Adidas. If you buy anything in a retail environment, they probably make the bags for them, okay? £50 million turnover at the time, loads of staff, never heard of them because they were based in South Wales and I'm not working in retail supply chain. But he rang me, he said, "You come highly recommended to do some key account management training." And I asked him who recommended me. We had a conversation about it. And he said, "Oh, where are you based?" I said, "I'm based in York." And he's based in Cardiff. He said to me, "Oh, I've got a client in York." He said, "We work with pavers who are a big," he said, "they're one of our clients." He said, "And I come up and see them, you know, once or twice a year." Oh, he said, "It's a long way to York, isn't it?" I just clocked it, left it. Then I said to him about something else, Cardiff and that kind of thing. He said, "Yeah," he said, "but it's a long way from York to Cardiff." And he mentioned it twice. I thought, right, there's an objection, there's a problem. So in the end, in my summary, I said to him, "So, blah, 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 working with me, so look what we do, etc." I said, "But I'm sensing the fact that me being based in York and you being based in Cardiff might present a problem to you. And here's why it shouldn't." And I just explained to him that I work in Bristol, I was working in Glasgow the week before, I work internationally sometimes. So me getting to Cardiff's not a problem. If it's not a problem for me, it shouldn't be a problem for you. He went, "Oh, okay, no problem." And that went away. And that's about owning your weakness.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a weakness when it comes to business. It could be you might not be big enough in their eyes, or you might not be experienced enough in their eyes, or it might be that you're more expensive than the competition, or it might be that geographically you're in the wrong place. If you understand what those weaknesses are, you own that in the summary and you get rid of it in the summary. Because if I hadn't have done that, he'd have put the phone down and hopefully he'd have said, great guy, exactly what we're looking for, but he's based in York. And I'll go and get someone in Cardiff. He said, great guy, just what we're looking for. We want to engage him. Not Cardiff and York's a problem anymore. Own your weakness, because you will have one. If you don't, your customer will.
Brilliant. I think that's quite a nice sort of maxim to finish on, really, I think. But just as a quick finisher, what else are we potentially not talking about that people need to start implementing when it comes to creating a sales plan or just being within a sales role in order to help move their company forward, whether they be a C-suite executive, a small business MD, actually working in the sales function? What's the number one tip? What's the cherry on the cake that...
Okay. I've got a stat that says a typical sales professional spends 65% of their time not doing work that influences the sales function. So they are distracted by emails, internal politics, meetings, things that are not going to move the dial on the profit or the revenue or the number of customers under their management. 65%, that's 2/3 of their time is spent not doing sales. So the thing they should be talking about is activity that influences sales. If you can bring that 65% of wasted, it's not wasted time, but non-sales productive time down to 40 and then down to 30, it'll always be 30. There's always things that get in the way. If you can bring that 65% of wasted time down to 40 and 30 over a period of time by doing the right activity at the right time with the right influence, can you imagine the success you're going to have? If you're already pretty successful a third of your time, imagine how successful you'll be at half your time and 2/3 of your time.
Yeah. So reduce the amount of wasted time, essentially. Or when we're not saying wasted time,
Distractions.
but distractions. Focus on the sales.
If it doesn't move the money, question why you're doing it.
Great. Where can people find you, Nick?
Well, I'm all over LinkedIn, Nick Bramley. There's me and a Tyler from Warrington, but I think if you put Nick Bramley in, I'm slightly ahead of him in terms of profile. It's Impactus Group, so it's Nick at impactus-group.com, and my contact details I'm sure will be in the show notes or whatever in terms of phone numbers, etc. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm accessible on LinkedIn. I post quite a lot of business stuff and quite a lot of rants on a Friday just as a bit of fun. So find me on there, start from there.
And he's a viral sensation now, aren't you? So brilliant.
One post.
Great. Thanks for your time, Nick. Appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, mate.